You know that feeling when you step into a dream and everything moves in slow motion? That was yesterday at Wembley. A semi-final, a packed house, the stakes so high you could feel the tension prickle on your skin. Manchester City against Nottingham Forest, two teams with very different histories, very different expectations, but the same burning desire to step into the FA Cup final. City, cool and sharp, started like they had been playing this match in their heads for weeks. It took just 2 minutes. 2 minutes for them to carve open the story of the day. Rico Lewis, 20 years old and writing his name into Wembley's mythos, finding the bottom corner with a calm precision that belied his years. He hit it like he had all the time in the world, like he could have paused the game, finished his cup of tea, and then picked his spot. And you thought, here we go. Manchester City. Inevitable. Merciless. But football, oh football, she is the greatest trickster of them all. Because for all City's control, for all their passes that stitched themselves into patterns across the pitch like an intricate tapestry, they left the door ajar. Just a crack. Just enough. Nottingham Forest, battered early, bloodied maybe, but never broken, started to believe. They had nothing to lose. And belief can be louder than tactics, stronger than logic. You could hear it in the way their fans roared with every turnover. Feel it in the way every loose ball became a cause. And somehow, some way, Forrest started to bend the game. But this is where our unlikely hero enters the stage. Not a player, not a manager. No. The man of the match? The Woodwork. 3 times. 3 soul-sucking, heart-stopping, breath-stealing times. Nottingham Forest crashed against the posts and the bar. Morgan Gibbs-White, a man possessed, volleying sweetly, perfectly, only to see the crossbar rise up like some ancient guardian and deny him. Later again, Gibbs-White beat Ortega, only to find the post mutinous and cruel. Then Taiwo Awoniyi, flicking towards goal, surely this time, no. The post again, that grim, unblinking sentinel, standing between Forest and destiny. It was Shakespearean, tragic, like watching a hero reach the summit only to have the ground crumble beneath him. Meanwhile, Manchester City, wise to the capriciousness of fate, knew better than to leave things to chance. Josko Gvardiol, up from the back, powered in a header early in the second half to make it 2-0, a goal that should have been the death blow. It felt final, it felt cold, it felt like reality pulling Nottingham Forest back into its grasp. But Forest kept fighting like men who did not know they were beaten. They pressed, they chased, they dared. City, for all their elegance, started to look over their shoulders, started to hesitate. And through it all, the Woodwork stood tall. No one can say Forest did not deserve more. Expected goals tells its own cold, clinical story. Nottingham Forest 1.68, Manchester City 1.37. Numbers that whisper of injustice, of a battle fought bravely but lost to the whims of cruel fortune. But matches are not won in spreadsheets. They are won in moments. And yesterday, the moments belonged to Manchester City and the Woodwork. In another universe, maybe Forest are the ones celebrating today. Maybe the dream carries on, banners waving, songs filling the night. But here, in this universe, the one cruel and beautiful as it is City who march on. To the final, to another shot at silverware. And Nottingham Forest, they leave not defeated, but heartbroken. There is a difference. The first half felt like watching a familiar story, one we have all seen before. The mighty Manchester City setting the tempo, setting the stage, and setting Nottingham Forest adrift on a sea of passes. From the very first whistle, City were like artists in a gallery no one else could touch. Precision everywhere. It was not just passing, it was painting with the ball. They pushed and pulled, stretched the field wide, invited Nottingham Forest to chase shadows, and chase they did. The opening minutes were suffocating. Red shirts penned in, barely able to breathe, let alone create. And then, bang, City struck. It happened so quickly, it almost felt inevitable. Rico Lewis, that boy with a heart as big as Wembley itself, picked up the ball 20 yards out, 1 touch to set, 1 stroke of the boot to finish. Ice in his veins, fire in the stands. 2 minutes gone, 1-0 to Manchester City. You could almost hear a collective sigh from the Forest faithful. Not today, not like this. But football has a way of throwing up little rebellions, even against the kings. Slowly, ever so slowly, Forest started clawing their way back. It was not pretty. It was not polished, it was pure grit. Forest started to creep forward, to take their moments in pockets, A cross here, a quick counter there. It was the kind of courage that does not show up on highlight reels but builds belief in the stands. Still, Manchester City controlled. 70% of the ball. Slick, ruthless, almost mechanical. But for all their territory, for all their passing triangles, there was not a second goal. City were winning, yes, but they were not killing the game. And as the first half wound down, you could feel it, that unmistakable prickle of tension. 1-0 is a dangerous lead. It invites hope. It invites chaos. Halftime came like a truce. City went in ahead, but not home. Forest went in bruised but breathing. And then, the second half. Whatever words were spoken in that Nottingham Forest dressing room, they poured out of the tunnel reborn. Nuno Espirito Santo had ripped up the caution and handed his players a matchstick. They were coming for City. Within seconds, they should have been level. Hudson-Odoi swept down the wing like a man possessed, crossed low, and there was Anthony Elanga, substitute and savior, or so we thought. He fluffed his lines, a swing and a miss, a chance begging, squandered. A moment that could have changed everything. Moments. Always the moments. City, rattled but ruthless, responded the way champions do. They went up the other end, won a corner, and from that corner came the hammer blow. Josko Gvardiol rising higher than anyone, meeting the ball like a man meeting destiny, thundering a header into the net. 2-0. And surely, that was it. Only, Nottingham Forest had not read the script. They refused to lie down. They threw everything forward, abandoned safety, embraced madness. And they were so close. Gibbs-White volleying against the bar with a strike so sweet it deserved a standing ovation. Minutes later, another chance, another flick, and the post sang its cruel mocking song again. Awoni rattled, 3 times denied by the cruel hand of fate disguised as wooden metal. City looked human, just for a moment, just long enough to make you believe. But this was not Forest's day, not yesterday. No matter how hard they ran, how bravely they fought, the gods of football had drawn a line. Manchester City crossed it, Nottingham Forest did not. The final whistle was almost a mercy. 2, but that scoreline is sterile compared to the storm we lived through. Wembley sighed. City celebrated. Forest mourned. And somewhere in the rafters, the football gods chuckled quietly to themselves. You know, it is easy to say Manchester City and Nottingham Forest simply played a football match yesterday. Easy, but lazy. What really happened at Wembley was a clash of ideologies, a collision of worlds. 2 clubs standing at opposite ends of the footballing spectrum, staring each other down under the weight of history, ambition, and hope. Manchester City were the juggernaut, the machine, the masters of possession. They are a team built on control, the kind of control that suffocates opponents and slowly, inevitably, crushes dreams. Every pass is deliberate, every movement a whisper of a greater plan. It is chess at 100 miles per hour. When City take the pitch, they do not play football so much as orchestrate it. Yesterday was no different. They moved like clockwork, like a symphony tuning up. Nunes threading passes through needles, Bernardo Silva finding pockets of space that only exist because he willed them into being. They did not need dozens of chances. They needed one good moment, and Lewis provided it. Then they needed a set piece, and Gvardiol sealed it. City are an avalanche, slow at first, unstoppable when they gather speed. Watching them is watching inevitability unfold. And yet, even avalanches can stutter. Even they can be rattled. Yesterday, for all their genius, there was a whiff of vulnerability. They gave Forest windows, tiny ones, fleeting ones, but windows nonetheless. Enough for hope to slip through. Enough for us to wonder, if only for a heartbeat, whether Goliath could actually fall. And then there is Nottingham Forest. Forest are everything Manchester City are not. They are chaos and courage. They are grit and gamble. Where City whisper sweet songs of control, Forest scream songs of rebellion. They are a team stitched together from belief and blood, a team that does not so much play football as wage war. They came to Wembley with a plan, to soak, to absorb, to survive. But when survival was no longer enough, they did something beautiful. They threw away fear. They opened their chests and played with their hearts exposed. You could see it in Gibbs-White, who ran and fought like a man trying to pull destiny into existence with his bare hands. You could see it in Hudson-Odoi, terrorizing defenders on the break. In Awoni, fighting for scraps and nearly turning them into gold. Forest played like a team who knew the odds were against them, but did not give a damn. They played like every second was a gift they intended to spend recklessly. And they deserved, truly deserved, more than they got. There was no shame for Forest yesterday, no regret in the effort, only heartbreak, and a kind of proud, defiant sorrow. For City, this was another step in their endless march toward more silverware, another polished performance added to the museum of greatness they have been building for years. For Forest, it was a moment to remember who they are. Fighters, dreamers, a club that refuses to kneel even when the world tells them to. The scoreline reads 2-0 to Manchester City. But what it does not say, what numbers will never tell you, is that both teams left the pitch yesterday as themselves, utterly, unforgettably, and undeniably. There are days when football feels like a battle of systems, strategies layered like puzzles inside puzzles. But yesterday was about individuals, about players who, for 95 chaotic, brutal, glorious minutes, carried entire dreams on their backs. You start with Rico Lewis. How could you not? 20 years old, standing in the heart of Wembley, and not just standing, commanding. When he scored, it was not just a goal. It was a moment where time cracked open and said, "Here you are, lad. This one's yours." The coolness, the precision, it spoke of a player who does not shrink from big stages but grows into them, like a flame finding oxygen. And Josko Gvardiol. There are headers and then there are statements. His goal was the latter. He rose above the chaos, above the noise, above the desperate hands clawing at him, and he crushed the ball into the back of the net like he was stamping City's ticket to the final himself. Defensively, he was colossal too, snuffing out danger with the same indifference you swat away a fly. He had one mistake, gifting Gibbs-White a golden chance. But somehow, even in that moment, he managed to recover, to scramble, to fight. Because that is what defines Gvardiol. Not perfection, but resilience. On the other side, Morgan Gibbs-White wore his heart not on his sleeve, but on his boots, his chest, his face. Every sprint, every tackle, every desperate shot that cannoned off the cruel, mocking Woodwork was him screaming against fate. Watching him yesterday was watching a man rage against inevitability. He deserved a goal. He deserved more than a pat on the back and a good effort. He deserved a moment to lift his arms to the Forest end, triumphant. Football, though, has no forward. Callum Hudson-Odoi, too, deserves mention. There were moments when he was the most dangerous player on the pitch, moments where his feet danced faster than thought, breaking City's structure in ways few manage. That cross early in the second half, sliding across the face of goal, begging for a touch, was a thing of brutal beauty. He played like a man with a point to prove, and prove it he did. Matheus Nunes was one of the quieter heroes for City. He did not steal the headlines, but he kept the engine ticking, snapping into tackles, moving the ball with a surgeon's precision. You need players like him in matches like this. Players who do the invisible work, the thankless shifts that make the difference between victory and chaos. Stefan Ortega in goal. What a strange, paradoxical afternoon for him. So often a bystander, and yet when truly tested, he was there. That leaping save to deny Gibbs-White's header late on was pure reflex, pure instinct. You could see it. That desperate extension, fingertips stretched beyond belief, and you thought, yes, that is what separates champions from almosts. Taiwo Awoniyi, coming on for Forest, did everything a striker could do except score. He bullied defenders, made clever runs, flicked that cruel little effort onto the post. On another day, he is the hero. Yesterday, he was just another tragic figure in a drama that did not end the way he wanted. Jeremy Doku, coming off the bench for City, was pure mischief. His cameo was like setting loose a wasp in a room, defenders twitching, unsure, trying desperately not to get stung. He drew fouls, ran the clock down, kept Forest at arm's length when City needed it most. And finally, Nuno Espirito Santo. No, he did not wear the kit. No, he did not touch the ball. But he shaped this Forest performance with his belief, with his refusal to accept that history had already decided the ending. The way Forest fought, the way they refused to be beaten even when beaten, that is a reflection of their manager. He walks away without a final, but with pride intact. Sometimes that is a different kind of victory. When it ended, it was easy to look at Manchester City's side and see the shining armor. But look closer. You would see the bruises, the scuffs, the relief. This was not a simple march to the final. This was a battle. A battle won not just by tactics, but by individuals who decided they would not be moved. One game, dozens of stories, thousands of hearts broken and mended all at once. And that, my friends, has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.